Imagine for a moment that you are lying on the soft, damp floor of an ancient forest at twilight. The air is cool and carries the scent of pine needles, wet stone, and rich, dark earth. Above you, the canopy is a heavy quilt of deep greens and charcoal grays, filtering the last remaining embers of the day into a soft, hazy violet. There is no wind here, only the profound rhythmic stillness of a world preparing for rest. As you settle into this space, I invite you to find your most comfortable position. Adjust your pillow, pull your blanket a little closer, and allow your shoulders to drop away from your ears. There is absolutely no rush. In this forest, time moves differently. It is measured in seasons and centuries, not minutes or hours. We are here simply to listen and to drift. If you find peace in these quiet explorations of our world, you might consider subscribing or leaving a soft comment to support the channel. It is a gentle way to help our community grow, much like the silent life we are about to explore. When we think of the largest living things on our planet, our minds often drift toward the vastness of the ocean. We picture the blue whale, a majestic giant cruising through the silent depths. Or perhaps we think of the Great Barrier Reef visible from the moon. But the true holder of the title for the largest organism on Earth is far more humble, and it lives not in the water, but right here, beneath the forest floor. Deep in the Blue Mountains of Oregon, there is a fungal network that has been quietly expanding for thousands of years. It is a single individual, a honey fungus, that has woven itself so thoroughly into the landscape that it now spans over 2,000 acres. To visualize that, imagine over 1,500 football fields, all occupied by a single, continuous, living being. What is perhaps most remarkable about this giant is its invisibility. If you were to walk through that section of the Oregon wilderness, you might see a few golden-capped mushrooms clustered at the base of a tree, but you would never guess the scale of the life beneath your boots. Most of a fungus's life is spent entirely out of sight, existing as a vast, secretive empire within the soil. It does not need the sun to thrive. Instead, it finds its purpose in the darkness, stretching through the earth in a way that connects every tree and every stone. To understand how such a massive entity can exist without being seen, we must look closer, much closer than the human eye allows. We must move our attention away from the towering trunks of the Douglas firs and sink down, past the leaf litter and the moss, into the microscopic world of the soil. There, the grand tapestry of the forest begins not with heavy roots, but with a web of incredibly delicate, silver-white threads. As we descend into this microscopic landscape, we begin to see that the vast, hidden empire of the fungus is built from something incredibly delicate. This intricate web, which we call the mycelium, is not a solid mass, but is instead composed of millions of individual thread-like structures known as hyphae. If you were to hold a handful of rich, damp earth, you might see faint, silvery white streaks running through it. But these are actually bundles of thousands of hyphae working together. To see a single hyphae, you would need to look much closer, for it is a masterpiece of miniature engineering. A single hyphae is often only a few microns wide. To give you a sense of just how small that is, imagine a single strand of your own hair. Now, imagine splitting that hair into 20 or 30 thinner strips. A hyphae is even finer than those strips, a whisper-thin filament that is nearly invisible to the naked eye. Yet, despite this extreme delicacy, these threads possess a strength that seems almost impossible. As you lie there, feeling the weight of your blankets and the support of your bed, think of the quiet power held within these tiny threads. They are capable of pushing through packed clay, navigating around heavy stones, and even penetrating the hard surfaces of buried wood. They do not have muscles or bones, but they use the pressure of the water within their cells to drive themselves forward through the earth. This strength comes from the way the hyphae is built. The cell walls of fungi are not soft. They are reinforced with a remarkably durable material called chitin. This is the same tough, flexible substance that makes up the hard outer shells of crabs, lobsters, and beetles. In the fungal world, chitin acts like a suit of microscopic armor, protecting the sensitive living core of the thread while allowing it to remain flexible enough to weave through the labyrinth of the soil. It is a beautiful contradiction, a life form that is as soft as silk to the touch, yet built with the same resilience as a deep-sea crustacean. The way a hyphae moves through the world is also unique. Unlike a plant root, which grows along much of its length, a hyphae grows almost entirely from its tip. Imagine a tiny, living finger constantly stretching forward, inching through the dark, cool spaces between grains of sand and silt. This tip is a sensory marvel, acting as both an explorer and a mouth. It tastes the soil as it moves, smelling for the presence of water or the faint chemical signature of a fallen leaf or a nearby root. It is a slow, methodical journey. The hyphae does not rush. It expands with a patient, rhythmic grace, branching out whenever it finds a pocket of nutrients. In the stillness of the deep earth, these millions of tips are constantly searching, turning, and lengthening, driven by a quiet, ancient intelligence. They are the scouts of the forest, the first to find the hidden riches buried in the shadows. As these individual threads continue to stretch and branch, they inevitably begin to cross paths. In the vast darkness of the soil, no thread remains alone for long. They begin to touch, to overlap, and to recognize one another, slowly beginning to weave the individual strands into a much larger, more complex tapestry that will eventually connect the entire forest floor. Imagine the moment two of these wandering threads finally encounter one another in the velvet dark of the soil. They do not compete or push each other away. Instead, if they are compatible, they perform a beautiful, silent union called anastomosis. They melt into each other, their cell walls softening and merging until they are no longer two, but one. This fusion creates a permanent bridge, allowing the network to share its lifeblood, the cytoplasm and essential nutrients, instantly across vast distances. It is as if two small streams met and decided to become a river, flowing together toward a common goal. This connection transforms a collection of individuals into a single, unified organism, a collective intelligence that can react to the environment as one. The sheer scale of this hidden architecture is almost beyond our comprehension. If you were to walk into a quiet grove and scoop up just 1 teaspoon of the rich dark soil, you would be holding an entire universe in your palm. Within that tiny spoonful, there can be miles of microscopic fungal threads, coiled and woven with impossible complexity. It is a testament to the richness of life that persists even in the smallest spaces, a silver lining that holds the very earth together. As you breathe in the cool, damp air of your room, try to visualize that density, miles of life, thinner than a spider's silk, tucked away beneath every step you take in the woods. As the clouds above the forest canopy release their gentle rain, the water trickles down through the needles and moss, eventually reaching the soil. Here, the mycelium waits. It acts as a magnificent biological filter, a living sieve that cleans and purifies the water as it moves toward the deep aquifers. The network catches minerals, filters out toxins, and ensures that the water nourishing the forest is as pure as possible. It is a selfless, quiet labor that benefits every living thing in the ecosystem, a hidden cleansing process that happens while the world above remains still and silent. This network is not bound by the rigid geometry of our world. It is nonlinear and incredibly fluid. When the growing tips encounter an obstacle, perhaps a buried granite boulder or the ancient woody root of an oak, the mycelium does not stop. It simply flows around the obstruction, branching and rejoining on the other side. It finds the path of least resistance, always prioritizing the health and expansion of the whole. It is a master of navigation, a map that is constantly redrawing itself to fit the reality of the earth, ensuring that resources can always be routed around a blockage to reach a thirsty neighbor. This vast subterranean web is the beginning of something even more profound. It is the infrastructure for what many now call the Wood Wide Web. It is the medium through which the forest begins to speak, a bridge that allows the trees to reach out and touch one another through the darkness. This silent partnership between the fungi and the roots of the trees is one of the oldest and most successful alliances in the history of our planet, a bond that changed the very face of the earth. It is a relationship of mutual trust, where the boundaries between two different kingdoms of life begin to blur. As we sink deeper into the quiet of the forest floor, our minds can begin to focus on the point where the living wood meets the living earth. It is here, in the cool, dark silence of the upper soil, that one of nature's most beautiful and ancient marriages takes place. This union has a name that sounds almost like a gentle incantation: mycorrhiza. The word itself is a quiet echo of the past, derived from two ancient Greek words, myx, meaning fungus, and rhiza, meaning root. When you say it slowly, it feels like a bridge between two worlds. It describes a relationship so fundamental to life on Earth that it is difficult to find a corner of the green world where it doesn't exist. In fact, over 90% of all land plant families, from the smallest blade of meadowgrass to the most ancient, sky-piercing redwood, live in this constant, symbiotic embrace with fungal partners. It is not an exception in nature, it is the rule. To understand the depth of this bond, we must travel back in time, far beyond the reach of human memory, to a world that looked very different from our own. More than 400 million years ago, the dry land was a harsh and desolate place of bare, volcanic rock and shifting sands. life was largely confined to the safety of the prehistoric oceans. When the first primitive plants began to inch their way out of the water and onto the shoreline, they faced a monumental challenge. They had no true roots to anchor themselves or to draw nutrients from the unyielding stone. It was the fungi that met them at the water's edge. These fungal networks were already masters of the terrestrial world, capable of secreting powerful enzymes to dissolve rock and extract the minerals hidden within. By weaving themselves into the tissues of those early plants, the fungi acted as a surrogate root system. They provided the structural support and the vital minerals that allowed life to finally take hold on dry land. Without this partnership, the lush green landscapes we find so peaceful today might never have evolved. The forests we walk through are, in a very real sense, the children of this 400-million-year-old pact. This ancient deal is built on a simple, elegant exchange of gifts. High above the forest floor, the trees reach their leaves toward the sky, acting as living solar panels. Through the quiet miracle of photosynthesis, they capture the golden energy of the sun and transform it into liquid carbon, a sweet, energy-rich sugar. This sugar is the lifeblood of the tree, but it is also a treasure that the fungus, living in the eternal darkness of the soil, cannot produce for itself. Deep underground, the tree sends this liquid sunlight down through its trunk and into its roots, where the waiting mycelium is wrapped in a delicate embrace. In this quiet subterranean market, the tree offers up a portion of its sweetness, feeding the fungus the energy it needs to grow and expand. In return, the fungus offers something the tree finds difficult to obtain on its own. It reaches out into the smallest crevices of the earth to gather the building blocks of life, the minerals and elements that the tree requires to grow tall and strong. As you settle further into your pillows, imagine this silent trade happening beneath you. The sun's warmth being traded for the cool mineral riches of the deep earth. Imagine the tree standing tall in the quiet of the evening, its leaves finally resting after a long day of soaking up the afternoon light. It is a silent factory of sweetness, but a tree cannot live on sugar alone. Just as we need more than just energy to stay healthy, a tree requires specific building blocks to construct its massive trunk and delicate buds. This is where the fungal network reveals its true mastery of the earth. Deep in the cool, dark soil, the mycelium is constantly searching for two precious elements, phosphorus and nitrogen. These minerals are essential for the tree to build its DNA, its proteins, and the very energy molecules that keep its cells alive. While tree roots are strong and efficient at anchoring the giant in the ground, they are relatively thick and clumsy compared to the gossamer threads of the fungus. A root tip is like a finger trying to reach into a narrow crack to find a single grain of sand, but a fungal hyphae is like a strand of spider silk. Because these threads are so much finer, they can slip into microscopic pores in the rocks and soil that are far too small for any root to enter. In this way, fungi are vastly better at mining the earth for minerals than the trees themselves could ever be. In this quiet subterranean market, the price for these minerals is significant. A tree may give away as much as 30% of all the sugar it produces through photosynthesis to its fungal partners. If you imagine the tree as a household, it is spending nearly a third of its income just to keep the partnership alive. It is a generous offering, a testament to how much the tree relies on the network to survive. This isn't a one-sided transaction. It is a deep mutual investment in a shared future. The tree provides the fuel, and the fungus provides the raw materials. This incredible exchange doesn't happen in the trunk or the thick woody branches, but at the very tips of the roots, where the living tissue is softest and most receptive. Here, at a microscopic level, the fungus and the tree meet in a space so small it is invisible to the naked eye. They weave together, creating a biological bridge where liquid sunlight flows one way and life-sustaining minerals flow the other. This constant rhythmic pulse of nutrients ensures that even in the poorest, most nutrient-starved soils, a forest can still rise, lush and green toward the clouds. The network acts as a safety net, making sure the entire ecosystem can thrive, even when the ground beneath it seems unyielding. As we look even closer at this microscopic meeting point, we find that nature has developed two distinct ways for these partners to join together. Some fungi prefer to stay on the outside, wrapping the roots in a protective, velvet-like embrace, while others are more intimate, venturing deep inside to enter the very cells of the plant. These two different paths lead us to the fascinating worlds of the outer and inner partners, each with their own unique way of supporting the life of the woods. Imagine the root of a mighty oak extending its reach into the cool, dark earth. As we look closer, we see the first group of these fungal partners, the ectomycorrhizal fungi. The name itself comes from the Greek word ekto, meaning outside, and it describes their relationship with the tree perfectly. Instead of entering the tree's individual cells, these fungi wrap themselves around the outside of the root tips in a dense, intricate embrace. They form what scientists call a mantle, a living sheath of fungal tissue that completely covers the delicate ends of the roots like a soft, protective glove. If you were to gently pull a small root from the soil and look at it through a magnifying glass, you might see this mantle as a fuzzy, velvet-like layer. It can change the very appearance of the root, making it look thicker or giving it a distinct color, sometimes a soft, snowy white, a pale yellow, or even a deep, earthy brown. This isn't just a decorative layer, though. This sheath acts as a physical shield, a biological barrier that protects the tree from the many microscopic threats that hide in the soil. It blocks harmful bacteria and parasitic fungi from reaching the tree's sensitive tissues, acting like a suit of armor for the roots as they push through the grit and stone. These outer partners are the primary companions of the great temperate forests of the world. If you find yourself walking beneath the broad canopy of an oak, the towering needles of a pine, or the smooth gray bark of a beech tree, you are walking above a vast world of ectomycorrhizal networks. These trees rely heavily on this external support system to gather the minerals they need to grow tall and strong over many decades. The fungus, in turn, finds a stable home and a steady supply of energy nestled against the life-giving roots of the forest giants. What is perhaps most wonderful about these hidden networks is how they reveal themselves to us above the ground. Many of the most beloved and famous mushrooms we find on our forest walks are the fruiting bodies of these very same ectomycorrhizal fungi. When you spot the bright golden trumpet of a chanterelle peeking through the damp leaf litter or the sturdy noble cap of a porcini, you are seeing the visible part of an invisible partnership. These mushrooms are the way the network breathes and spreads its seeds, a brief and beautiful bridge between the world of light and the secret world of the soil. While these outer partners provide a protective layer on the surface, there is another group of fungi that chooses a much more intimate path. Instead of wrapping around the roots, these fungi venture deep inside, crossing the boundaries of the plant's very cells to form an even closer bond. This leads us into the microscopic world of the inner partners, where the connection between fungus and plant becomes so deep that the two organisms almost begin to function as one. Imagine a world even smaller and more intimate than the one we have been exploring. While the outer partners we spoke of are content to wrap the roots in a protective velvet embrace, the inner partners seek an even deeper level of connection. These are the endomycorrhizal fungi, and their journey is one of remarkable biological trust. Instead of staying on the surface, these fungal threads actually penetrate the cell walls of the plant roots, moving gently into the spaces within the individual cells themselves. It is important to remember that this is not an invasion or a disease. It is a welcome entry into the very heart of the plant's once being, a partnership that has been refined over millions of years of evolution. Once inside the cell, the fungus does something truly beautiful. It begins to branch out, dividing its thin threads again and again until it forms a structure that looks like a tiny, exquisite crystalline tree. Scientists call these structures arbuscules, a word derived from the Latin for little tree. If you could shrink down to the size of a single plant cell, you would see a miniature ghostly forest growing inside the roots of the larger plant. These arbuscules are the primary site of the great exchange. Because they are so finely branched, they create a massive surface area within a very small space. This allows the plant and the fungus to pass nutrients, water, and sugars back and forth with a level of efficiency that is almost impossible to imagine. Every tiny leaf on these internal fungal trees is a gateway for life-giving minerals. These arbuscular mycorrhizae are perhaps the most common and widespread of all fungal partners on our planet. While the colorful mushrooms we see on a forest walk often belong to the outer partners, these inner ones are the quiet, invisible supporters of the vast majority of the world's greenery. They are the unseen companions of the wheat in the fields, the flowers in your garden, and the soft, swaying grasses of a summer meadow. In fact, over 80% of all land plants on Earth host these tiny internal forests. Almost every plant you have ever touched or tasted has likely relied on these microscopic arbuscules to gather the phosphorus and nitrogen it needs to grow. One of the most humbling things about these fungi is their absolute invisibility to the naked eye. They do not produce large, fleshy mushrooms that we can pick or photograph. They are so small that they can only be seen through the lens of a powerful microscope, where they appear like delicate silver lace against the backdrop of the plant's tissue. They live their entire lives in the dark, damp silence of the root, never seeking the light of the sun, yet making the life of the plant possible. It is a gentle reminder that in the natural world, the most vital connections are often the ones we cannot see, happening quietly beneath the surface of things. As we think about these billions of individual connections happening beneath every footstep, we begin to see that the forest is not just a collection of trees and fungi working in isolated pairs. It is something much larger, a vast and complex tapestry. These individual threads of mycelium are like the wires of a living switchboard, linking one plant to another and one species to another. This web of connection creates a social network of the soil, a community where resources and information can flow freely from neighbor to neighbor. And at the center of this community, like grand wise elders, are the oldest and largest residents of the woods, the ones who hold the entire system together, acting as hubs for the life of the entire forest. Imagine, for a moment, the oldest tree in this forest. Perhaps it is a towering oak or a silent, ancient pine. Its trunk so wide that three people could not join hands around it. Its crown reaches high into the canopy, bathing in the golden warmth of the sun, while its roots delve deep into the cool, dark earth. This great tree is more than just a single plant. It is what scientists call a mother tree. These older, larger trees act as the central hubs for the entire fungal network, the anchors of the subterranean community. While a younger tree might have a modest circle of connections, a mother tree is a massive terminal of life, her roots intertwined with a dizzying number of fungal partners that radiate outward in every direction. Because of her size and her age, a single mother tree can be connected to hundreds of younger saplings throughout the woods. She is the heart of a vast, living map. Through the mycelium, she is linked not just to her own offspring, but to the children of other trees and even different species. It is a level of connectivity that mirrors the complexity of a city's power grid. But it is far more graceful and quiet. This network allows the forest to function as a collaborative whole rather than a collection of competing individuals. In the deep shadows of the forest floor, life is a slow and difficult struggle for a young sapling. The canopy above is so thick that very little sunlight reaches the mossy ground, making it nearly impossible for a small tree to produce enough sugar through photosynthesis to sustain itself. This is where the mother tree steps in. Through the fungal cables, she sends her own surplus of sugar, essentially liquid sunlight, down into the dark, routing it through the mycelium to the saplings that need it most. This generous transfer of energy allows these young trees to survive and grow in the shade, waiting patiently for decades until an older tree falls and creates a gap in the light. Without this subterranean support system, many of the trees we see today would never have made it past their first few years of life. The mother tree acts as a silent guardian, ensuring the next generation has what it needs to endure the lean times. But what is perhaps most moving is that this care is not entirely random. Remarkable research has shown that mother trees can actually recognize their own kin through the network. When sending out these life-giving nutrients, they often prioritize their own seedlings, sending them more sugar and even reducing the spread of their own roots to give their children more space to grow. It is a profound realization that beneath the stillness of the woods, there is a deep sense of family and recognition. The forest is not a place of cold, indifferent competition, but a landscape of nurturing and ancient wisdom. These mother trees stand as witnesses to centuries of change, holding the memory of the forest within their rings and the future of the forest within their roots. As we stand in their presence, we can almost feel the slow, steady pulse of resources moving through the earth. This connection, however, is not just about the movement of food. It is also a medium for a much more complex interaction. The mycelium does more than just carry sugar. It serves as the very wires through which the forest begins to speak, carrying a language of chemical signals that allow the trees to whisper to one another across the dark, silent reaches of the soil. Imagine for a moment the stillness of a summer afternoon in the heart of the woods. To our eyes, the trees appear motionless, rooted in a deep, eternal silence. But within the mycelium, a vital conversation is taking place. Trees use this vast network of fungal threads to send chemical warning signals to their neighbors, acting as a sort of early warning system for the entire community. When a tree is challenged by insects, perhaps a swarm of aphids or a hungry beetle, it doesn't just endure the encounter in isolation. Instead, it releases specific distress chemicals directly into the fungal network. These molecules travel through the hyphae, drifting slowly through the soil like a scent carried on a very faint underground breeze. As these chemical signals reach neighboring trees, those trees begin to listen. They receive the message that a threat is nearby, and remarkably, they begin to prepare. Long before the insects actually reach the neighboring trees, those trees start producing their own defensive toxins. They might make their leaves more bitter or increase the levels of certain compounds that make them difficult for an insect to digest. It is a collective defense, a way for the forest to raise its shields before the challenge even arrives. Because of the mycelium, a single tree's experience becomes the wisdom of the grove. This process is not instantaneous. In our world of fiber optics and light speed data, it can be hard to imagine a communication system that moves so deliberately. These chemical signals travel at a very slow pace, sometimes taking hours or even days to reach their destination. But this timing fits the unhurried life of the forest perfectly. There is no rush here. The trees and the fungi operate on a scale of time that spans decades and centuries, where a few days is merely a heartbeat. It is a pace that invites us to slow our own breathing to match the rhythmic, patient pulse of the woods. It is a beautiful, quiet cooperation, a language of molecules and memories shared in the cool darkness of the earth. We are only just beginning to decode these chemical whispers, but as we listen closer, we find that the forest has even more secrets to share. Beyond these chemical markers, scientists have made a truly startling discovery. It seems the mycelium is not just a conveyor of nutrients and chemicals. It also pulses with something even more mysterious, something that mirrors the very way our own bodies function. Deep within those tiny thread-like hyphae, researchers have detected the faint, steady flicker of electrical impulses, suggesting that the Wood Wide Web might be even more alive and reactive than we ever dared to imagine. These electrical pulses are not merely random noise, they are rhythmic bursts of activity that are remarkably similar to the nerve impulses or spikes found in animals and humans. It is as if the fungus has a nervous system of its own, one that stretches across the entire forest floor, sensing and reacting to the world in real time. But unlike the lightning-fast reactions of an animal, these fungal signals move with a grace and a patience that belongs only to the earth. They travel along the delicate hyphae at a rate of just a few millimeters per minute. If you were to watch them, they would look like slow, gentle ripples of light moving through a vast, dark sea, carrying information from one corner of the woods to the other. Scientists, listening closely to these electrical flickers, have made a startling discovery. By analyzing the timing and frequency of these spikes, they have identified up to 50 distinct patterns that resemble the structure of human language. It is as if the mycelium has a vocabulary of 50 words, patterns of electricity that change depending on what the fungus is experiencing. While we cannot yet translate these messages into our own tongue, we can see that the conversation is rich and complex. These signals change based on environmental factors, responding to the touch of a raindrop, a shift in the moisture of the soil, or the cooling of the air as the sun sets. The network is constantly updating its internal map of the world, adjusting its behavior to ensure the survival of the whole. Because of this constant exchange of information, the entire forest floor can be thought of as a slow-moving, living computer. It is a decentralized intelligence where no single brain makes the decisions. Instead, the billions of fungal threads work together to process data, allocating resources where they are needed most and coordinating the growth of the trees above. It is a form of wisdom that is collective and quiet, a subterranean mind that has been calculating the best ways to sustain life for millions of years. This living computer doesn't need screens or wires. It is made of water, minerals, and the breath of the earth. As you think about this vast, pulsing network, let your own mind become as still as the forest at twilight. There is a profound peace in knowing that beneath every step we take, there is a world that is deeply connected, constantly communicating, and incredibly resilient. You don't need to do anything or solve any problems right now. Like the trees, you are supported by a foundation that is steady and strong. Take a slow, deep breath, feeling the air fill your lungs, and then leave your body in a long, quiet sigh. The forest is silent now, bathed in the soft blue light of the evening. The birds have tucked their heads beneath their wings, and the wind has died down to a faint whisper in the high branches. Everything is in its place. The chemical signals are drifting, the electrical pulses are rippling, and the great work of the woods continues without effort. In this stillness, we can begin to appreciate not just the partners who build the forest, but also the quiet workers who keep it clean and vibrant. Just as the network grows and communicates, another group of fungi is busy in the shadows, performing the essential task of transformation, ensuring that every fallen leaf and every piece of wood finds its way back into the cycle of life. In the deep, soft stillness of the evening, as we imagine the electrical pulses moving like slow ripples through the soil, we can turn our attention to another essential group of workers. While we have spent time admiring the partners who trade and communicate, it is important to remember that not all fungi are engaged in those complex social contracts. Some have a different, equally vital calling. These are the forest's dedicated cleanup crew, the quiet recyclers who ensure the cycle of life never grinds to a halt. Scientists call them saprotrophs, a word that sounds perhaps a bit technical, but their work is as poetic as any other part of the woods. Their lives are spent in the darkest, dampest shadows, focused on the fallen leaves, the snapped branches, and the ancient logs that have finally come to rest on the earth. Think of a massive oak tree that has stood for 300 years. When it finally falls, it represents a monumental amount of stored energy and matter. Without the saprotrophic fungi, that tree would simply sit there, unchanged, for centuries. In fact, if these fungi did not exist, the forest would eventually be buried under miles of undecayed debris. Every leaf that ever fell, every twig that ever snapped, would pile up higher and higher, until the living trees were choked out by the weight of their own history. The world would become a graveyard of preserved wood, unable to move forward. But the saprotrophs prevent this from happening through a process that is both patient and profound. They possess a unique and powerful biological key. They are the only organisms on Earth capable of efficiently breaking down lignin. Lignin is the incredibly tough, complex material that gives wood its strength and rigidity. It is the steel in the skyscraper of a tree, and for almost every other living creature, it is completely indigestible. It is too hard, too stubborn to be broken. Yet, the fungi have mastered it. They release specialized enzymes that act like microscopic tools, slowly dismantling these stubborn molecules, turning hard, unyielding wood into soft, crumbly earth. As they work, they are performing a great service of transformation. They are not just clearing away the old, they are unlocking the treasures held within. This process returns vital carbon and nutrients, the very building blocks of life, back into the soil. What was once a branch reaching for the sky becomes a nutrient-rich feast for the roots of a tiny seedling. It is a beautiful closed loop where nothing is ever truly lost. It is simply repurposed. You can feel this work beneath you if you imagine pressing your hand into the forest floor. It is soft, yielding, and cool. This slow, methodical digestion creates a very special substance known as humus. Humus is the dark, organic heart of the soil, the rich layer that gives the earth its characteristic scent and its incredible fertility. It is the end product of the saprotroph's labor, a masterpiece of decomposition that provides a stable, nourishing home for everything that grows. As the fungi finish their work, they leave behind a landscape that is cleaner, richer, and ready to support the next great chapter of the forest's life. This dark velvet layer of humus is more than just dirt. It is a complex architecture of life, a foundation that is now ready to be shaped and held together by even more mysterious forces hidden within the grains of the earth. As you settle deeper into the thought of this dark velvet humus, imagine the tiny microscopic threads of the mycelium working as master builders within it. They are not just breaking things down, they are constructing the very architecture of the earth. To do this, fungi produce a remarkable and mysterious substance called glomalin. Discovered only relatively recently by science, glomalin is a sticky, durable protein that acts as a sort of soil glue, coating the tiny grains of sand, silt, and clay that make up the ground beneath us. Without this gentle adhesive, the soil would be little more than a loose, dusty powder, easily swept away by the wind or washed into the sea by a heavy rain. But because of the glomalin, the soil begins to take on a beautiful, stable structure. It binds these tiny particles together into small, resilient clumps called aggregates. This might seem like a small thing, but it changes everything for the life of the forest. When soil is held together in these clumps, it creates a network of tiny air pockets and winding channels. These spaces allow the earth to breathe. They give the roots of the trees the oxygen they need to survive, and they act like a vast subterranean sponge. When the rains fall, the water doesn't just run off the surface. It is pulled deep into these fungal-made channels, soaking into the earth, where it can be stored and used during the long, dry days of summer. The scale of this work is truly staggering. Glomalin is so abundant and so long-lasting that it accounts for nearly a third of all the carbon stored in the world's soil. It is a quiet, invisible vault, locking away carbon for decades or even centuries, and keeping the atmosphere in balance, while the world above continues its busy pace. In a healthy forest, where the fungal networks are strong and undisturbed, the soil becomes a fortress of stability. It is much more resistant to the forces of erosion and the stresses of drought. It holds its shape, it holds its water, and it holds the future of the trees. You can imagine the earth as a living, breathing body, with the mycelium acting as both the skeleton and the circulatory system. This stable, well-constructed world of the soil provides the perfect stage for the grand theater of the passing year. The fungal network, though it seems still and unchanging in its deep, dark home, is actually finely tuned to the rhythmic pulse of the planet. It feels the subtle shifts in temperature and the changing levels of light filtered through the canopy far above. As the earth tilts and the sun moves across the sky, the mycelium prepares to transition into a new phase of its life, responding to the arrival and departure of the seasons with a quiet, ancient wisdom. As the winter snows melt and the first gentle rains of spring soak into that well-structured soil, the fungal network begins to stir from its long sleep. It feels the warmth returning to the earth, a slow, deep pulse that travels through the layers of humus and clay. This is a time of awakening. The moisture acts as a signal, a quiet call to action for the billions of microscopic threads waiting just below the surface. The hyphae, which may have been still for months, begin to extend their tips once more, stretching through the softening ground to find the roots of trees that are also waking up. When the canopy above finally fills with green leaves and the summer sun reaches its zenith, the forest enters a phase of intense, invisible labor. Summer is the season of the great exchange. The trees are flooded with sunlight, producing a surplus of sugar through photosynthesis, and they channel this liquid energy down into their roots to trade with their fungal partners. In response, the mycelium works tirelessly, expanding its reach into every crevice of the soil, mining for minerals that the trees cannot reach on their own. The network grows rapidly during these long, warm days, weaving a denser and more intricate tapestry beneath the forest floor, ensuring the entire ecosystem is nourished and supported through the heat of the year. But as the days grow shorter and the air takes on a crisp, cool edge, the focus of the network begins to shift. This is autumn, the season of the great fruiting. After months of gathering energy and building its strength in the darkness, the mycelium prepares to reveal itself to the world above. It is a transition from the hidden to the visible, a moment where the internal life of the soil expresses itself in the light of the fading year. When the first true frosts arrive and the leaves fall to form a thick, protective blanket on the ground, the mycelium begins to retreat. Winter does not kill these ancient organisms. It simply invites them into a state of deep, quiet dormancy. They pull back into the insulation of the earth, far below the reach of the freezing wind. In the silence of the winter woods, the network remains perfectly intact, resting and holding its place in the frozen soil. Some fungi are so incredibly resilient that they can even survive being frozen solid within the permafrost of the far north, their biological processes slowing to a near halt for years, only to resume their work with ease the moment the ground finally thaws. In this rhythmic cycle of rising and falling energy, there is one moment that captures the imagination more than any other. It is that sudden, almost magical appearance of a mushroom in the damp grass or on the side of a mossy log. One day, the ground appears empty, and the next, a perfectly formed, intricate structure has emerged from the shadows, as if from nowhere. To understand this mystery, we must look closer at what a mushroom actually is, and the incredible, silent force it uses to make its brief but vital entrance into our world. Imagine you are walking through the cool, damp woods on a quiet morning, the air still heavy with the scent of pine and wet earth. You look down at the base of an old oak tree and notice a cluster of soft, pale mushrooms that weren't there yesterday. To our eyes, the mushroom is the most familiar part of the fungus, but in reality, it is only a temporary visitor. You can think of a mushroom as being like an apple on a tree, while the mycelium is the permanent living body of the organism hidden away in the soil or the wood. The mushroom is merely its fruit, a brief, beautiful expression of the life pulsing beneath your feet. Its primary purpose is simple and singular: to lift its reproductive cells or spores away from the damp soil and into the moving air. Because the forest floor is often still and sheltered, the fungus must build a structure tall enough to reach the gentle currents of wind that can carry its legacy to new lands. You may have noticed how a mushroom seems to appear almost by magic, standing tall in a spot that was completely empty just the evening before. This rapid growth is one of nature's most impressive feats, and it happens through a process that is quite different from how most plants grow. Instead of slowly creating new cells through division, which takes a great deal of time and energy, a mushroom grows primarily by inflating the cells it already has. It uses hydraulic pressure drawing moisture from the surrounding soil to fill its tiny, microscopic cells like thousands of tiny balloons. This water pressure is incredibly powerful. Though a mushroom may feel soft and delicate in your hand, the force of its expansion is enough to push through hard-packed earth, lift heavy pieces of asphalt on a driveway, or even crack through solid stones. It is a quiet, steady strength, a slow-motion explosion of life that allows the fungus to claim its place in the world above, even in the most difficult environments. But because this structure is built so quickly and is composed mostly of water, it is also very fragile and ephemeral. Once the mushroom has fulfilled its duty and released its billions of spores into the breeze, its time is quickly over. It does not linger like the branches of a tree or the stems of a bush. Within just a few days, or sometimes even hours, it begins to soften and dissolve, sinking back into the earth. It returns its nutrients to the soil and the very mycelium that created it, completing its short cycle in the sun. As the physical form of the mushroom fades and disappears, it leaves behind a legacy that is invisible to the naked eye, but vital to the future of the forest. It has successfully sent out its messengers, tiny, microscopic specks of life that are now beginning a journey of their own. These spores are now drifting through the trees, entering a hidden world of their own, where the scale of life becomes almost impossibly small, and the distances they travel become almost impossibly large. Imagine the air around a single mushroom. It might look clear and still to our eyes, but it is filled with a silent, microscopic rain. A single mushroom, standing quietly in the moss, can release billions of spores in just one day. It is a number so large it is difficult to truly grasp, like the number of stars in a distant corner of the galaxy, or the grains of fine sand on a quiet, moonlit beach. These spores are the fungal version of seeds, yet they are far more ethereal. Each one a tiny dust-like speck of potential life, waiting for its moment to begin. These spores are so incredibly light that they do not simply fall to the ground. They float. They drift on the slightest stir of air, catching even the gentlest breath of wind that moves through the heavy leaves. Because they are so small, they can remain suspended for long periods, becoming part of the very air we breathe. Once they find their way out of the sheltered forest floor and into the higher currents of the atmosphere, they can travel for thousands of miles. A spore released in a quiet wood in one country might eventually settle into the soil of a different continent, crossing vast oceans and high mountain ranges on a journey that lasts for weeks. Not every fungus waits passively for the wind to take its children. Some have evolved fascinating active ways to ensure their spores get a head start. There are species that use internal water pressure to build up energy, eventually launching their spores into the air like tiny microscopic cannons. This process is incredibly precise, firing the spores just far enough to clear the still air surrounding the mushroom's cap so they can be caught by a passing breeze. It is a rhythmic, mechanical marvel, happening at a scale we can barely perceive, a testament to the ingenuity of life in the shadows. Other fungi rely on the music of the rain. When a heavy raindrop falls from the high canopy and strikes the specialized surface of a mushroom, it creates a tiny energetic splash. This impact acts like a spring, launching the spores upward and outward away from the parent. In this way, the very storms that dampen the earth also serve as the vehicle for the forest's expansion. It is a beautiful, ancient collaboration between the elements and the organism, where the energy of a falling drop of water becomes the catalyst for a new generation. Perhaps most wondrous of all is the hidden connection between these spores and the sky itself. Scientists have discovered that fungal spores can reach the upper layers of the atmosphere far above where birds fly. Up there, in the cold, thin air, these tiny specks can actually influence the formation of clouds. They act as nuclei, providing a solid surface for water vapor to cling to and condense into droplets. In a very real sense, the fungi of the forest floor help to create the rain that will eventually fall back down to nourish them. It is a perfect closed circle of life that connects the deep, damp soil to the vast open sky. This invisible migration is happening all around us, a constant drifting tide of life that we rarely stop to consider. And just as the journeys of these spores are varied and complex, the structures that produce them are equally diverse. The world of fungi is not limited to the simple shapes we might recognize from a storybook. It is a kingdom of endless, startling variety, where life takes on forms that challenge our imagination and colors that seem to have been borrowed from a dream. As we look closer at this hidden kingdom, we begin to see that the mushroom is only the beginning of a much larger, much more colorful story. As we ponder the vast, drifting tide of spores, we begin to realize that the world of fungi is far more expansive than we can easily imagine. This kingdom is a hidden mosaic of life, tucked away in the corners of our world, waiting quietly to be discovered. Scientists estimate that there are between 2 and 4 million different species of fungi on Earth, a number so large it is difficult to fully grasp. To put that in perspective, that is far more than all the species of plants and animals combined. Yet, for all our modern technology and exploration, we have only just begun to scratch the surface of this diversity. To date, we have formally described and named only about 150,000 of them. This means that the vast majority of the fungal kingdom remains a mystery, an unread book of life, resting beneath the leaf litter and within the bark of ancient trees. Every time you walk through a forest, you are likely passing by dozens of species that have never been seen by human eyes or recorded in a scientific journal. It is a humbling thought, a reminder that the world is still full of secrets waiting for those who move slowly enough to notice them. The variety of these organisms is not just in their numbers, but in their incredible appearance. While we often think of mushrooms as simple, earthy colored umbrellas, they actually come in every color of the rainbow. In the deep shaded corners of the woods, you might find a cluster of fungi in a shade of deep royal violet, looking like tiny jewels dropped on the moss. In other places, a fallen log might be adorned with brackets of neon orange or brilliant sunny yellow, glowing like embers against the dark wood. There are even fungi that are a striking electric blue, a color so rare in the natural world that it feels almost otherworldly. The shapes they take are equally breathtaking. Some fungi resemble delicate structures of underwater coral, with intricate branches that reach upward in shades of pink, tan, or white. Others look like miniature birds' nests, complete with tiny egg-like structures inside that hold the spores. There are species that grow like delicate lace veils, draping themselves over the forest floor in a pattern so fine it seems impossible that it was made by nature. Some, known as earth stars, look like celestial bodies that have fallen to the ground, their outer layers peeling back into a star shape to reveal a central sphere of spores. Among these wonders is the giant puffball, a fungus that can grow to be the size of a resting sheep. These large white orbs sit silently in meadows and clearings, looking like smooth stones or forgotten pillows. A single large puffball can contain trillions of spores, a number so vast that if every spore grew into a new fungus, they would cover the entire planet. But the puffball is patient, waiting for a passing animal or a heavy raindrop to tap its surface, releasing a gentle little cloud of life into the air. This incredible diversity of form and color is a testament to the resilience and creativity of life. Each shape, each hue has a purpose, a role to play in the grand, slow-moving symphony of the forest. But as the twilight deepens and the last of the sun's warmth fades from the air, the colors of the forest begin to blur into shades of gray and black. It is in this deepening darkness that some members of the fungal kingdom reveal their most magical secret. A secret that doesn't rely on the sun's light to be seen, but instead creates its own. As the daylight recedes completely, the forest floor transforms. In the deepest shadows, where even the moon's silver light cannot reach, a faint ethereal glow begins to emerge from the darkness. It is not the bright, harsh light of a flame, but a soft, steady radiance that seems to emanate from the very wood and earth itself. This is the phenomenon of bioluminescence, a living light that some species of mycelium and mushrooms possess, turning the midnight woods into a quiet gallery of natural lanterns. For centuries, travelers and forest dwellers have whispered about this ghostly light, often referring to it in folklore as foxfire. In the old stories, these glowing patches were sometimes thought to be the lanterns of forest spirits, or the footprints of magical creatures moving through the undergrowth. But the reality is just as wondrous as any myth. This cold light is produced by a precise chemical reaction within the fungus, where a molecule called luciferin reacts with oxygen, assisted by an enzyme. This reaction releases energy in the form of light without generating any heat at all, a feat of natural engineering that is as efficient as it is beautiful. If you were to rest your head on a cushion of mist in a damp, ancient grove, your eyes would eventually adjust to see this soft, ghostly green light. It might appear on the delicate gills of a mushroom, or as a shimmering web-like veil across a decaying log where the mycelial threads are woven thick. It is a light that doesn't flicker or dance. It simply hums with a quiet, steady presence, casting a pale emerald hue onto the nearby leaves and soil. In the stillness of the night, it feels like the forest is breathing in light. This luminescence serves a vital purpose in the life of the fungus. By glowing in the dark, these fungi are sending a signal to the nocturnal world, Insects such as beetles and flies are naturally drawn to the mysterious light. As they crawl over the glowing surfaces, they inadvertently pick up thousands of tiny spores on their legs and bodies. When they eventually move on, flying or crawling deeper into the night, they carry these seeds of the next generation to new parts of the forest, helping the fungus expand its reach through the darkness. There is something profoundly peaceful about this hidden light, a reminder that life continues to thrive and communicate even when the rest of the world is asleep. It is a testament to the incredible resilience of these organisms, which have mastered the art of survival over unimaginable stretches of time. This ability to glow, to adapt, and to thrive in the most hidden corners of the earth is not a recent development. It is part of a lineage that stretches back to the very dawn of life on land, a story of endurance that began long before the first tall trees ever cast a shadow upon the ground. As we sit in the stillness of our modern woods, it is humbling to realize that the mycelium beneath us carries a memory of an earth we would barely recognize. To truly understand the power of this kingdom, we must look back much further than the age of the modern forest into a time when the world was a vastly different place. If we were to travel back some 400 million years, we would find ourselves in a landscape where the rules of nature seemed almost alien. In that distant era, long before the first true trees had evolved the strength to reach for the clouds, the tallest living things on the entire planet were not plants, but massive, mysterious fungi known as prototaxites. These were the silent giants of their time, rising like smooth, towering pillars from the damp, ancient earth. Imagine walking through a world where, instead of oaks or pines, you were surrounded by fungal towers that reached heights of over 20 feet. These structures were formidable, often measuring 3 feet wide at their base, tapering slightly as they stood as the undisputed skyscrapers of the Devonian period. They dominated the horizon for millions of years, standing tall and solitary while the earliest land plants were still small, mossy carpets, barely reaching a few inches off the ground. It is a striking image, these great pale columns of fungal tissue acting as the world's first true canopy, long before the evolution of the woody trunks and leaves we know today. It is this deep ancestral strength that has allowed the fungal kingdom to endure through the most turbulent chapters of our planet's long history. Fungi are among the very few lineages of life that have survived all 5 of the Earth's major mass extinction events. When cataclysms struck, whether from the impact of asteroids or the shifting of tectonic plates, and the majority of life on Earth vanished, the fungi remained. In many cases, they were the only things that flourished in the aftermath, acting as the bridge between an old world and a new one. They are the ultimate masters of adaptation, capable of reconfiguring their entire existence to suit a changing climate or a shifting environment. This resilience is born of their ability to be patient. Whether the world is locked in a frozen ice age or sweltering in a greenhouse heat, the mycelium remains tucked safely beneath the surface, persistent and calm. They have learned how to wait in the darkness for the right moment to begin again, a skill they have perfected over hundreds of millions of years. And while they no longer build towering monuments above the ground, they have used that time to perfect a much more subtle and vital craft beneath the surface. Just as these organisms have navigated the vast, treacherous stretches of geological time, they have also mastered the art of navigation through the earth itself. Deep in the cool, quiet layers of the soil, the network has evolved into a hidden architect of life, managing the flow of the most precious resources. This ancient wisdom is still at work today, as the mycelium functions like a vast subterranean plumbing system. In the silence of the forest floor, these delicate threads are constantly at work, seeking out and moving water across great distances to ensure the survival of the entire community. Imagine the forest on a long, hot afternoon in late August. The sun has been relentless, and the surface of the earth feels dry and brittle to the touch. Yet, if you were to reach beneath the layer of fallen leaves, deep into the cool, dark soil, you would find a world that remains remarkably hydrated. This is because the mycelium acts as a vast subterranean plumbing system for the entire forest. It is a network of living pipes, infinitely more complex than anything humans have ever engineered, and it works in silence, without the need for mechanical pumps or electricity. These fungal threads possess an incredible ability to move water across significant distances through the earth. In a landscape that might seem uneven or fragmented to us, with damp, mossy lowlands near a stream and dry, rocky ridges high above, the mycelium bridges the gap. It can draw moisture from the saturated soil of the valleys and transport it hundreds of feet uphill to a tree growing on a parched, sun-exposed slope. This movement is slow and steady, a gentle pulsing of life-giving fluid through the microscopic channels of the hyphae, defying the simple pull of gravity to ensure that every partner in the network receives what it needs. Because of this hidden infrastructure, the entire ecosystem is granted a vital layer of protection against the harshness of the seasons. During long periods without rain, when the smaller plants might begin to wither, and the trees might struggle to keep their leaves from curling, the fungal network steps in as a stabilizer. It functions as a shared resource, redistributing the forest water supply so that no single area becomes too parched to sustain life. It is a form of natural insurance, a collective safety net that ensures the survival of the many, rather than just the few who happen to grow directly over a water source. The fungi do more than just move water. They are also masters of storage. Within the delicate thread-like structures of the hyphae, moisture is held in reserve for the future. These tiny cells can swell with water during wet spells, acting like microscopic reservoirs that keep the soil humid and pliable even when the weather turns dry. This internal storage is vital for the fungi themselves, allowing them to continue their metabolic work in the dark. But it also benefits every creature that calls the soil home, from the smallest bacteria to the deep-reaching roots of the oldest oaks. When we walk through the woods, we often think of the trees as solitary giants, competing for the resources they need to grow. But the behavior of the mycelium tells a different story, one of profound interconnection and mutual support. By ensuring that water is shared across the landscape, the network maintains the stability and health of the entire forest. It creates a balanced environment where life can persist through the leanest times, anchored by the quiet, tireless work of the threads beneath our feet. But as the mycelium manages the flow of water deep within the earth, it is also engaging in another, even more significant exchange. Its influence is not limited to the moisture in the soil. It reaches upward, playing a silent but monumental role in the very composition of our atmosphere. Just as it moves water to sustain the trees, it is also working to gather and store the very elements that regulate the temperature of our entire planet, weaving the earth and the sky together in a cycle that has lasted for eons. As we consider the movement of water, we must also look at the silent, steady flow of carbon that travels alongside it. Trees, in their patient dance with the sun, pull carbon dioxide from the air, transforming it into life-sustaining sugars through the miracle of photosynthesis. A significant portion of this captured carbon is not kept by the tree for its own growth, but is instead channeled downward, passing through the roots and into the waiting embrace of the fungal network. In this way, these subterranean webs have become one of the world's most vital carbon sinks, a vast, living reservoir that holds the elements of the atmosphere deep within the cool, dark safety of the earth. This carbon is not merely passing through. The mycelium is a master of storage, locking these molecules away into the very structure of its hyphae and the surrounding soil. Here, in the quiet depths, carbon can remain sequestered for decades, and in many cases, for centuries. It is a slow, methodical process of archiving the planet's history, one molecule at a time, keeping it stable and out of the warming air above. In the great northern forests, where the ground is often cold and damp, the scale of this storage is truly immense. Recent research has revealed that up to 70% of all the carbon stored in these northern forest soils is actually found within the living and decaying threads of the mycelium itself, rather than in the leaf litter or the trees. By anchoring this carbon beneath our feet, the fungal network acts as a global regulator, helping to maintain the delicate balance of the Earth's temperature. It is a silent cooling system, a vast and intricate mechanism that works day and night to keep the world's climate stable. We often look to the green canopy above when we think of protecting our environment, but the dark kingdom below is just as essential. Protecting the integrity of the forest soil is every bit as important for our planet's future as protecting the trees themselves. When the soil is left undisturbed, the fungal web can continue its ancient work of gathering, storing, and shielding the earth from the heat of the sun. Take a moment now to simply be present with this thought. Imagine the immense, quiet strength of the ground beneath you, holding all that life and all that history in a state of perfect stillness. As you lie there, let your breath slow down even further. Inhale deeply, and as the air fills your lungs, imagine you can catch the faint, unmistakable scent of the forest floor. That rich, earthy aroma of damp soil, ancient moss, and hidden roots. It is a scent that feels deeply familiar, almost like a distant memory of home. Hold that breath for a quiet second, feeling the coolness of it, and then let it out in a long, soft sigh. With every breath, you are connecting to the same air that the trees and the fungi share, a part of the same cycle that has breathed life into the world since the very beginning. Let that earthy fragrance ground you, pulling you deeper into the comfort of your bed as we begin to explore the secrets hidden within that very scent. That scent you are imagining, that deep, refreshing aroma that rises from the ground after a summer rain, has a name. Scientists call it petrichor, but the heart of that fragrance is a specific organic compound known as geosmin. It is produced by the very life forms we have been tracing through the dark, soil-dwelling bacteria and many species of fungi. When a raindrop hits the dry earth, it traps tiny bubbles of air at the surface, which then pop and release this earthy perfume into the breeze. It is a signal from the ground that life is being quenched, and for us, it is one of the most recognizable smells in nature. Our relationship with this scent is ancient and profound. In fact, the human nose is remarkably, almost impossibly, sensitive to geosmin. We can detect its presence in the air at concentrations as low as 5 parts per trillion. To give you a sense of how powerful that is, consider the often cited fact about the ocean's most famous hunters. We are actually far more sensitive to the scent of damp earth than a shark is to a single drop of blood in the water. This extraordinary sensitivity wasn't an accident of evolution. It likely served as a vital survival tool for our ancestors, acting as a biological compass that could lead them toward water in a parched landscape or toward the most fertile, nutrient-rich land where plants were likely to thrive. When you breathe in the air of a healthy forest, you are taking in more than just oxygen. You are inhaling the very essence of the ecosystem. This fungally rich air has a measurable effect on our well-being. Studies have shown that simply being exposed to the scent of the forest floor can significantly lower our levels of cortisol, the hormone our bodies produce in response to stress. It is as if our nervous system recognizes the smell of a thriving fungal network and interprets it as a sign of safety and abundance. Beyond just calming our minds, there is evidence that these forest aerosols can even give our immune systems a gentle boost, encouraging the production of cells that help us stay healthy. As you lie there, drifting on the gentle tide of your breath, imagine that earthy scent wrapping around you like a soft, cool blanket. It is the smell of a world that is working exactly as it should, a world where nothing is wasted and everything is connected. This connection, however, doesn't stop at the surface of the soil or the tips of the roots. The fungal kingdom is even more pervasive than it seems. While the mycelium weaves through the earth, other fungi have found a way to live even higher up, within the very greenery of the canopy. If you were to look at the leaves of the trees above you, glowing softly in the twilight, you might think they are purely made of plant tissue, but hidden within almost every leaf of every tree on earth is a secret resident. These are the endophytes, fungi that live entirely inside the plant's leaves and stems. Unlike the fungi that cause rot or disease, these silent partners live in the tiny spaces between the plant cells without causing any harm at all. They are the hidden inhabitants of the forest's crown, and they play a role just as vital as the networks beneath the soil. While the mycelium manages the world below, these endophytes are busy protecting the world above, weaving themselves into the very fabric of the tree's daily lives. As you gaze up through the branches, imagine the millions of leaves fluttering in the quiet evening air. Each one is a world of its own. We often think of a leaf as a simple solar panel, a thin sheet of green designed to catch the sun, but it is actually a bustling community. Science tells us that almost every single leaf of every tree on our planet contains these endophytic fungi. The word itself comes from the Greek endo, meaning inside, and phyton, meaning plant. They are the invisible tenants of the canopy, living out their entire lives within the green tissues of the trees without ever making their presence known to the naked eye. Unlike the fungi that might cause a leaf to wither or spot, these endophytes are remarkably gentle. They do not feed on the plant in a way that causes damage or decay. Instead, they reside in the microscopic air-filled spaces between the plant's cells. They are like quiet house guests who move in, unpack their things, and then set about making the home better for everyone. This relationship is one of the most widespread and successful partnerships in the natural world, yet it remains largely invisible to us as we walk through the woods. The benefits these hidden residents provide are truly extraordinary. One of their most clever tricks is acting as a chemical shield for the tree. Some endophytes produce complex compounds that make the leaves taste incredibly bitter to hungry deer or wandering insects. A caterpillar might take one bite of a leaf and find it so unpalatable that it simply moves on to find something else. In this way, the fungus protects its home, ensuring the leaf remains intact so that both the tree and the fungus can continue to thrive. It is a silent, chemical defense system that operates in the background of every forest, keeping the greenery lush and protected. But their protection goes even deeper than deterring herbivores. In some environments, these fungi are the reason a plant can survive at all. Certain endophytes have been found to help their host plants tolerate extreme conditions such as intense summer heat or high levels of salt in the soil near the coast. They act like a biological buffer, smoothing out the stresses of the environment and allowing the tree to remain resilient even when the weather turns harsh. Without these tiny partners, many of the landscapes we love would look very different, perhaps far more barren and brown. We are only just beginning to pull back the curtain on this hidden layer of biodiversity. For a long time, these fungi were overlooked because they are so difficult to see and study. Yet every time scientists look closer, they find new species with unique properties and secrets. It is a humbling reminder that the forest is far more complex than we can perceive with our limited senses. There is a vast unseen intelligence at work here, a system that knows exactly where to place its resources and how to protect its partners. As you lie there, let your mind rest on the idea of this incredible coordination. This leads us to wonder about the nature of the network itself. How does a fungus with no brain and no central nervous system manage such a complex and widespread existence? As we descend back from the leaves to the roots, we find that the mycelium possesses a remarkable kind of spatial memory. It is an intelligence that doesn't rely on a brain, but on the very structure of the threads themselves, a memory written into the earth, allowing the network to learn, to adapt, and to remember the world it inhabits. Imagine, for a moment, the quiet brilliance of a mind without a brain. It is a concept that feels almost like science fiction, yet it is unfolding right beneath your feet in the cool, damp earth. This spatial memory isn't stored in a central organ, but is distributed across the entire shimmering web of the mycelium. To understand how this works, we can look at the fascinating ways fungi solve problems. In controlled laboratory settings, researchers have placed mycelium at the entrance of a complex maze with a small piece of food, perhaps a bit of wood or sugar, at the far end. Without any eyes to see or ears to hear, the fungus begins to explore. It doesn't just grow in random directions. Instead, it sends out its delicate threads in a searching pattern. Once a single hyphae finds the food, the entire network seems to know. It begins to withdraw its unsuccessful branches and reinforces the one path that leads directly to the prize. This is not just a simple chemical reaction. It is a display of efficiency and problem solving that rivals the most advanced computer algorithms. Perhaps even more startling is an experiment involving a close relative of the fungi, the slime mold. While technically a different type of organism, it shares the same decentralized networking behavior. Scientists placed oat flakes on a map of Japan, positioning them to represent Tokyo and its surrounding cities. When the mold was allowed to grow, it created a network of connections between the flakes that was nearly identical to the actual layout of the Tokyo subway system. It found the most efficient, resilient, and direct routes, matching the work of human engineers who had spent decades planning the same infrastructure. This intelligence is rooted in a form of memory. The network remembers where it has found food in the past. Even if the food is removed, the mycelium maintains a thicker, more robust connection to that specific location for a long time, as if it is waiting and prepared for the bounty to return. It prioritizes the routes that have proven successful, allowing it to navigate the dark, obstacle-filled soil with uncanny precision. Within this web, the fungus is constantly making decisions. It must decide where to allocate its precious resources, where to send the most sugar, where to build the strongest walls, and where to retreat. These decisions are made based on the needs of the whole. If one part of the forest is struggling, the network can reroute nutrients from a thriving area to support the weaker section. It is a form of decentralized intelligence, where every single tip of every fungal thread acts as a sensor, a processor, and an actor. There is no central command, no brain directing the flow. Instead, the wisdom is held by the collective, a living computer made of water, chitin, and light. As you drift deeper into relaxation, consider how this silent, thoughtful network doesn't just exist for itself. It is deeply integrated into the lives of the creatures that walk, crawl, and fly through the woods. The intelligence of the mycelium is not an isolated thing. It is a bridge connecting the fungal kingdom to the animal world in a dance of survival and cooperation that has played out for millions of years. The forest floor is a busy place, even in its quietest moments, and the intelligence of the mycelium is deeply woven into the lives of the creatures that walk, crawl, and fly through the woods. For many of the smaller residents, the mushrooms that sprout above the soil are more than just a curiosity. They are a vital source of life. You might imagine a squirrel or a chipmunk. Their quick movements, softened by the moss, searching for a specific prize among the roots. These animals rely heavily on mushrooms as a primary food source, especially as the seasons begin to change and the forest prepares for its own long winter rest. Fungi provide essential proteins and minerals that are hard to find elsewhere in the woods, acting as a concentrated source of energy for the creatures of the undergrowth. Lower down, closer to the damp earth, the pace slows even further. Here, you might find a slug moving with a rhythmic gliding motion across a velvet-capped mushroom. It is a slow, patient process of nourishment. Some species of slugs have evolved to be highly specialized, focusing their entire diet on only a few specific types of fungi. They are the gourmets of the forest floor, seeking out the exact chemical profile they need to thrive. As they feed, they leave behind a trail that other creatures might follow, a map of the forest's hidden bounty written in silver across the dark soil. But perhaps the most remarkable partnership between fungi and animals happens deep underground, in the elaborate, hidden cities built by leafcutter ants. These tiny engineers do not eat the leaves they carry into their burrows. The leaves are far too tough for them to digest. Instead, they use those leaves as a substrate, a kind of living compost, to grow their own fungal gardens. In these dark, humidity-controlled chambers, the ants carefully farm a specific type of mycelium that exists nowhere else in the wild. It is a beautiful, rhythmic exchange of labor. The ants provide the fungus with fresh leaves and protect it from competing molds or bacteria, acting as tiny gardeners who weed and tend to their crop. In return, the fungus grows small, nutrient-rich structures that serve as the ants' only source of food. It is a perfect closed-loop system of mutual care, where neither the ant nor the fungus could survive without the other. This sophisticated form of agriculture is not a recent discovery, nor is it a human invention. While humans have only been farming for about 12,000 years, leafcutter ants have been practicing their fungal husbandry for over 50 million years. They were master gardeners long before the first ancient forests even resembled the ones we walk through today, perfecting the art of cultivation in the cool darkness of the earth eons ago. While these large-scale partnerships are easy to see, the forest floor is also home to a much smaller, more shadow-filled world. Beneath the fallen leaves and the winding ant tunnels, a different kind of interaction is taking place, one that is less about cooperation and more about a delicate, predatory balance. In the microscopic spaces between soil particles, the mycelium takes on a different role, acting as a silent guardian against the invisible hunters of the deep earth. As you breathe in the cool, damp air of the twilight, let your mind sink even deeper, past the roots and the burrows, into the realm of the microscopic. In the stillness of the deep soil, where the air is cool and the light never reaches, the mycelium takes on a role that is both guardian and hunter. While we often think of fungi as passive absorbers of nutrients, some species have developed a remarkable way to help the forest maintain its delicate equilibrium. These are the nematode-trapping fungi, quiet sentinels that live among the roots and the damp earth. They play a vital role in controlling the populations of tiny, translucent worms called nematodes, creatures so small they are invisible to the naked eye, yet they exist in their millions within every handful of soil. It is a necessary work, a gentle checking of the scales that keeps the underground ecosystem healthy and vibrant, ensuring that the roots of the trees are not overwhelmed by these microscopic travelers. To catch these wanderers, the fungal threads create ingenious tiny structures that demonstrate the incredible adaptability of life. Some species weave delicate, circular loops, like microscopic lassos made of living silk. These loops are sensitive to the slightest touch. When a nematode happens to swim through one of these rings, the fungal cells sense the movement instantly. In a fraction of a second, the cells swell with water, tightening the loop in a soft, firm embrace that holds the tiny traveler still. Other fungi prefer a different approach, coating their hyphae with specialized sticky pads that act like a microscopic adhesive, catching anything that brushes against them in the dark. It is a slow, silent process, happening in the absolute darkness of the earth, far beneath the rustle of the leaves and the song of the wind. This isn't an act of aggression, but one of deep necessity and balance. In many parts of the forest, the soil is naturally low in nitrogen, a nutrient that all living things, from the smallest blade of grass to the tallest cedar, need to grow and thrive. By catching these tiny organisms, the fungus is able to break them down and recycle their nitrogen back into its own network. This provides a crucial source of nourishment in nitrogen-poor environments, allowing the mycelium to continue its tireless work of supporting the trees and plants above. It is a natural way the forest maintains its internal harmony, ensuring that no single population grows too large and that every drop of life-giving nutrient is put to its best use, cycling through the web of life in an endless, quiet loop. These interactions are happening right now, silently and constantly, beneath every single footstep we take in the woods. They are the hidden mechanisms of a world that never truly sleeps, a world built on a foundation of intricate, unseen relationships that stretch back through time. The forest floor is a living tapestry, woven from millions of these tiny moments of exchange and balance, creating a stable ground for everything else to grow upon. And as we move our focus from the dark, damp soil back toward the surface, where the air is fresh and the shadows are long, we find that the spirit of cooperation between fungi and other life forms takes on even more incredible, visible shapes. Sometimes the partnership is so complete, so perfectly balanced, that two entirely different kingdoms of life merge into one, creating something entirely new. On the rough bark of the ancient trees and the weathered, sun-warmed faces of the stones, we see the beautiful results of this ultimate union, the lichens, the pioneers of the living world. As we emerge from the damp, dark soil and move our gaze toward the surface, we find that the spirit of cooperation takes on a more visible, yet no less miraculous form. On the rough, protective bark of the ancient trees and the weathered, sun-warmed faces of the stones, we see the beautiful results of a union so complete that it creates something entirely new. These are the lichens. To the casual eye, a lichen might look like a single, simple organism, a crust of pale green, a ruffle of gray, or a splash of vibrant orange on a rock. But if we were to look closer, with a steady and quiet mind, we would see that a lichen is actually a perfect partnership between two different kingdoms of life. It is not one thing, but a living bridge between a fungus and an alga. In this gentle arrangement, neither could survive as well alone as they do together. The fungus acts as the architect and the guardian. It provides the physical structure, a tiny, intricate cradle that protects its partner from the harshness of the wind and the drying heat of the sun. The fungal threads wrap around the alga in a soft, firm embrace, holding moisture like a sponge so that the delicate cells within do not wither. In return for this protection and a place to call home, the alga performs a kind of magic that the fungus cannot do on its own. It captures the energy of the soft, golden sunlight and turns it into food through photosynthesis. This shared nourishment flows through the lichen, sustaining both partners in a quiet, rhythmic exchange of life that requires nothing more than light, air, and the occasional drop of rain. Because of this incredible teamwork, lichens can thrive in places where almost nothing else can. They are often the very first life forms to colonize bare, desolate rock. They cling to the stone with a quiet persistence, releasing tiny amounts of acid that very slowly, over the course of centuries, break down the hard minerals into the finest dust. Through this patient work, they are the creators of the very first layers of soil, paving the way for mosses, grasses, and eventually the great trees of the forest. They are among the slowest growing organisms on our planet, sometimes adding only a fraction of a millimeter to their size each year. In their stillness, they are also some of the longest lived. Some lichens clinging to the rocks in the high, quiet places of the world have been there for thousands of years, watching the seasons turn and the stars move across the sky with a patience that we can only begin to imagine. This ability to survive on the edge of the world, to turn barren stone into a cradle for life, marks the lichen as a true pioneer. They do not wait for the world to be ready for them. They make the world ready for others. They represent the first step in a journey of renewal, a quality of resilience that is woven deep into the identity of the fungal kingdom. As we consider the quiet strength of the lichen, we begin to see how fungi act as the ultimate healers and restorers of the earth, stepping into the most difficult landscapes to begin the long, slow process of bringing life back to the land. This role as a pioneer is not limited to the slow weathering of rocks. It extends to every corner of our world where the environment has been challenged or changed. This pioneering spirit of the lichen, this quiet ability to begin life where there was none, is a trait shared by many members of the fungal kingdom. They are the great restorers, the first responders of the natural world. When a landscape has been transformed by the intense heat of a forest fire or the overwhelming flow of a volcanic eruption, the world can seem still and empty. The trees may be gone and the soil may be covered in thick gray ash. But beneath that silence, the fungi are already beginning their work. Fungi are often the very first life forms to return to a scorched landscape. While the ground is still cooling, specialized spores find their way into the cracks and crevices of the charred earth. They do not see a wasteland. They see an opportunity to begin the cycle of life once again. They thread their way through the ash, stabilizing the soil and preparing a soft, nutrient-rich bed where the first green seeds of the future can eventually take root. This role as a healer goes even deeper than simply returning to a burnt forest. Fungi possess a hidden chemistry that allows them to interact with the earth in ways that seem almost like alchemy. In places where the soil has been burdened by the presence of toxic chemicals or heavy metals, materials that would be harmful to most plants and animals, the fungi step in as silent cleansers. They have the remarkable ability to break down these complex, harmful substances into simpler, harmless elements. This profound process of using fungi to heal and restore the environment is known as mycoremediation. It is a slow, methodical cleansing, a way for the earth to wash itself clean through the patient growth of the mycelium. In some of the most surprising corners of scientific discovery, researchers have found that certain fungi can even eat or dismantle materials that we once thought were indestructible, such as plastics or the heavy remains of oil spills. These specialized fungi see the long chains of molecules in plastic not as waste, but as a source of energy. They slowly break those bonds, tidying up the environment and turning human-made debris back into the basic building blocks of nature. They are the ultimate recyclers and healers, working without fanfare in the dark corners of the world to ensure that the balance of the ecosystem is maintained. They are the quiet janitors of the planet, making sure that nothing is wasted and that every wound in the earth has a chance to close and mend. As we consider these vast healing capabilities, we are reminded that the work of the fungus is never truly finished. It is a constant, rhythmic process of tending to the earth, from the smallest crack in a stone to the wide expanses of a recovering forest. This work brings us back to the heart of the woods, where the air is cool and the ground is soft beneath the canopy. Here, in the stillness of the ancient forest, the healing is already complete. The network is established, the soil is rich and clean, and every living thing is held in a state of quiet, interconnected grace. The pioneering work of the past has created the peaceful world of the present, where the mycelium continues to weave its invisible, shimmering web through the dark, damp earth, connecting everything in a silent, supportive embrace. If we were to pull back our view now, rising slowly above the individual trees and the local patches of soil we have explored, we would see something truly breathtaking. If the earth beneath our feet were to suddenly become as clear as glass, we would see that the mycelium is not just a local phenomenon, but a global one. It is a shimmering, silver-white web that covers the continents, threading through every forest, every meadow, and every valley. This vast subterranean network acts as a living map of the world's vitality, an ancient architecture that has been quietly under construction for hundreds of millions of years. This global web does something remarkable. It ignores the boundaries we often place between different types of life. It does not simply connect one oak tree to another oak tree. Instead, it creates sprawling, multi-species communities. Beneath the surface, the forest is a melting pot of different lives, all woven together by the same fungal threads. In this hidden world, a birch tree can share its extra nutrients with a fir tree through a shared fungal bridge. During the summer, when the birch is flush with sunlight and sugar, it might send a portion of its wealth to a shaded fir tree nearby. In the winter, when the birch has lost its leaves and the evergreen fir is still active, the favor may be returned. This constant, rhythmic exchange of resources challenges the long-held idea that nature is defined solely by competition and the struggle for individual survival. While competition certainly exists, the mycelium tells a different story, one of profound cooperation. It suggests that the health of the individual is inseparable from the health of the collective. In the eyes of the fungal network, the forest is not a collection of separate trees standing side by side. It functions more like a single giant organism. Each tree, each shrub, and each fungal thread is like a cell in a much larger body, working in a slow, harmonious pulse to ensure the survival of the whole. As we rest here in the deepening twilight of our journey, the scale of this connection feels both immense and deeply comforting. The forest is a place where no one truly stands alone. Every leaf that flutters in the breeze and every root that reaches into the dark is supported by a system that values balance above all else. The air here is still, and the sounds of the world are beginning to fade into a soft, rhythmic hum. We are moving closer to the heart of the mystery, where the line between the self and the surroundings begin to blur. The network is steady, the connections are secure, and the entire world seems to be breathing in unison, held in the gentle, enduring embrace of the Earth's oldest and most patient architect. As we settle deeper into the quiet of the evening, we can reflect on the profound wisdom hidden within these silver-white threads. The mycelium is more than just a biological system. It is a teacher of silent truths. Perhaps its most important lesson is that everything, every tree, every leaf, and every creature is connected in ways we cannot see. We often perceive the world as a collection of separate objects divided by space and distance. But the network reminds us that beneath the surface there is a unity that binds us all. These invisible connections are the true foundation of life, providing a strength that goes beyond what is visible to the eye. It is a comforting thought, a reminder that no living thing is ever truly isolated or forgotten. The mycelium also showed us the incredible value of patience. It does not rush to the surface to show its beauty or seek recognition. Instead, it spends the vast majority of its life growing slowly but surely through the dark. It finds its way through the cold, heavy earth with a quiet persistence, never demanding immediate results. In a world that often moves too fast, the fungus reminds us that there is power in being still, in taking the time to build a strong foundation, and in trusting the process of growth, even when it is hidden from view. It teaches us that the most significant work often happens in the silence, away from the light. It is a humbling thought to realize that even the smallest, most delicate threads can support the mightiest giants of the forest. Without these microscopic hyphae, the towering redwoods and ancient oaks could not stand. This relationship reminds us that no contribution is too small, and no part of the whole is insignificant. The strength of the great forest canopy depends entirely on the integrity of the smallest parts beneath it. Even in our own lives, the smallest acts of care or the quietest moments of reflection can be the threads that hold everything together, providing support to things much larger than ourselves. In the wisdom of the forest, there is no such thing as waste. Every fallen branch, every withered leaf, and every fragment of organic matter that returns to the soil is welcomed by the fungal network. Everything has a purpose and a place in the great cycle of the woods. What may look like an end is simply a transition, a way for nutrients to be recycled and reborn into new growth. This lack of waste creates a perfect balance where nothing is lost and everything is cherished. It is a gentle, rhythmic cycle, a reminder that we are part of a system that knows exactly how to care for itself and how to turn every ending into a new beginning. The network is a silent witness to the passing of centuries. While the world above changes, while seasons turn and the landscape shifts, the mycelium remains. It has seen the forest through droughts and floods, through long winters and vibrant springs, holding the memory of the land in its tiny electrical impulses. It is a living record of resilience, a testament to the enduring nature of life. As we prepare to drift further into the stillness, we can feel the weight of that history, a steady, patient presence that has been here long before us and will remain long after. The air is growing cooler now, and the forest is drifting into a state of deep, restorative rest. The lessons of the mycelium are settling into our minds like a soft blanket of moss, grounding us and easing the tension of the day. We are beginning to feel the same stillness that permeates the soil, a sense of being secure and supported by the earth beneath us. The world is folding in on itself, retreating into the quiet dark where the network does its best work. We are ready to let go, to release our thoughts into the gentle current of the evening, and to join the forest in its long, peaceful slumber. As your eyes grow heavy and the world around you fades into a soft, velvet shadow, remember that the forest does not stop, even as you fall into your own deep rest. The earth beneath you continues its quiet, essential work. It is a tireless, a gentle labor that doesn't require effort, only presence. While the birds find their nests and the larger animals curl into their burrows, the mycelium remains active, moving nutrients, sharing information, and maintaining the balance of the world. It is a comforting thought that while we let go of our responsibilities and our worries, a vast ancient system is staying awake to look after the foundation of life. Deep within the dark, rich soil, millions of tiny electrical impulses are moving through the network right now. They are not frantic or hurried. They move at the pace of a slow, steady heartbeat. These are the whispers of the woods, the silent conversations between the fungi and the roots, ensuring that every part of the ecosystem has what it needs to face the coming dawn. You can imagine these pulses as soft, dim glows beneath the surface, a subterranean map of light that guides the forest through the night. It is a rhythm of pure existence, a steady flow of energy that has been pulsing since the beginning of time. The great mother trees, those ancient giants we have traveled alongside, are resting now. Their massive branches are still and their leaves are no longer reaching for the sun. Down below, their intricate root systems are being cradled by the fungal web. The mycelium wraps around them like a soft, living blanket, holding them steady and keeping them nourished while they dream. There is a profound safety In this embrace, the trees do not have to hold themselves up alone. They are anchored by a billion tiny threads that refuse to let go. In this moment, the forest is a place of total trust, where every living thing relies on the quiet strength of the network. The night air is cool and crisp, carrying the scent of damp pine and ancient earth. The ground is soft, yielding to the weight of the night, and the network is stable. It is a fixed point in a changing world, a structure that provides a sense of deep, unshakable security. You are part of this world too. You are not separate from the trees or the soil or the shimmering web of the mycelium. You are connected to this ancient rhythm, supported by the same forces that hold the forest together. Just as the mother tree is cradled by the fungi, you are cradled by the stillness of your own space, held in the safety of the present moment. Take one final slow breath of the forest air. Feel the coolness enter your lungs, and as you exhale, feel the last remnants of the day leave your body. Your breath is part of the forest breath, a slow and rhythmic cycle that connects you to everything around you. The tension is gone, replaced by a heavy, pleasant warmth that moves from your head down to your toes, grounding you into your bed like a root into the soil. Sleep now with the knowledge that you are watched over. The mycelium is there, beneath the leaves and the moss, a silent guardian of the woods. It will continue its work through the long hours of the night, keeping the world connected and the earth healthy while you drift into the deep, dark sea of sleep. The forest is at peace. The network is quiet. Everything is exactly as it should be. Sleep now. Sleep.